Alright, so it's going to be our last ceramic project for this shelter in place, because you guys all should still have 2 pounds of clay left. At least 2 pounds of clay left. Some of you might have more. If you want to make more stuff because you have more clay, you can go ahead and do that, but this is the next required project. I'm going to start by taking the 2 pounds of clay that I have, and I'm going to divide that up into about a third of the clay, divided in thirds. So we have 3 balls of clay, all about the equal size. If you have some sort of wire or some sort of string, dental floss would probably work really well. You can cut it with that. What you're going to do is you're going to find some sort of surface. You'll see that I'm working on a piece of maple right here. It's a piece of wood. Clay doesn't want to stick to the maple. You might also find, if you have some sort of fabric, I've got a piece of cotton duct or it's canvas. Well, I am going to take a moment to remind you that this clay that you're not using right now, you should always put them away. Would have been better if I had gotten this wet. In fact, I'm going to get these damp real quick. Okay, so I have them damp now. I'm going to put them in the bag because I don't want them drying out. If anything, I want them to get maybe a little softer. This clay's a little dry. Okay, so I'm going to start out by making a slab. So once again, I have these pencils from the kit that I gave you guys. I have a rolling pin. If it's sticking, like this is sticking to the bottle, then perhaps it would be better if you had another piece of fabric. So I'm going to put this on the board because it's not going to stick. I'm going to put the fabric on top of it. Put pencils on either side of it and use that. That way the clay won't stick to what I'm working on. Okay. It's going to be a little bit too wide for that. I think I'm pretty much there anyways at this point. You can start out by creating a 1/4 inch thick slab. Okay, so at this point I have a slab. Now I'm going to take a piece of cardboard. Here I have a Cheerios box, which I'm going to open up here. I want to make sure I'm thinking about how big this thing is here. I'm going to trace a general outline of my slab here. And I'm going to draw a vase form on here. Okay. How well you can see that. Hopefully you can see it well. I drew a vase form on there. And I'm going to cut out that vase form. Now this could have been done on a piece of paper if you don't have a piece of cardboard sitting around, but it's just good to have a form that you can use, because you're going to be doing two of these vase forms here, and we would like them to be the same. So now I'm going to take my slab, I'm going to put my cardboard on top of it, and I'm going to cut it out using a butter knife is what I'm using right now. And I'm going to let my slab, my vase form, I'm going to set it aside. I'm also going to take this, because it's feeling like it's been out a little bit, it's slightly dry, and I'm going to put some water on it and put it in this bag. Bring my water back. So I'm going to take out another one of these things, and and I'm going to take my scraps and put it in there. So now I've got a second third of my clay, and I'm going to do the same thing I just did. I'm going to take this one and put it, ouch, ooh, I banged it. This is a good thing to point out. I just dropped it and kind of banged up the edge. It's the nice thing about clay and wood, as it happens to be, is you can fix quite a bit of stuff along the way. Even if you make little mistakes, it's not that big of a deal. All right, so I'm going to set this over here, kind of get it out of the way while I roll this. Now this is damp because it had water all over it, and it's making it more likely to stick to the wood. But if I want it to not stick, I'm going to move it around to different places and take a moment to roll this out a little bit. It also helps to stretch it if I flip it over. And now I'm going to put these pencils down because I'm getting closer to where I want to be with this thing. This maybe needs to be a little wider. And take my piece of cardboard, see if it fits. And as soon as it's about the right thickness, it's actually a little thick on the top here. But it is big enough. Okay. So now I'm going to cut out a second one of these forms. Okay. Then take this. I'm going to set this slab down next to the other one. They're laying nice and flat on the table over here. It's nice and warm outside right now, so these are going to dry pretty quickly. But I definitely want them to lay nice and flat. They're basically the same shape. There we go. Just checking to make sure they're the same shape as I set them out. I know you can't see them, but they're sitting on the table over there in front of me. Okay, now I'm going to take the rest of my clay I'm going to combine them all into ball shapes. And I'm going to roll them out into coils. Now this coil, I need enough coil here to reach. I'm going to take these two and I'm going to combine them into a single ball. Now, it's going to be a lot, you're going to have to do some problem solving along the way here, because yours is likely to be slightly different. You're going to come across with different issues along the way, and you're going to need to problem solve them. Now, I need enough length of coil to go all around this shape, around the entire shape. Hard to see how much all the way around, not including across the top. So I probably actually have enough already, but I'm going to go ahead and make sure I have plenty. I'm making my coils all about the same thickness. Now I'm going to make them nice and straight, and I'm going to do the rolling pin again. This one I'm going to have to tear off because it's getting too long. The way I see it at this point, I think I've got the two sides on the bottom of the vase here. Should be trying to, I've got a little bit more skill. I've got a lot more skill than you guys have from the beginning. So you should probably be doing this with a pencil to make them even. To make them all even thickness. Hopefully some of you guys have rolling pins inside your house, and you'll find that those will help as well. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to need a straight edge, which I'm going to use this cardboard here as a straight edge. I'm going to start out long enough. I start out by kind of straightening this out, trying to make it fairly straight. Now I'm going to take my straight edge, which you should be using the ruler I gave you, unless you have some other straight edge you want to use, but you could certainly be using the ruler that I gave you. The ruler would actually be pretty nice because it would probably help you to make them the same width. And I would recommend that you do about the width of the ruler, actually. But you're basically making these long strips that are straight on the sides. Now you need to be always aware of the moisture content of your clay. If you're working on your clay and you get distracted by a YouTube video and you walk away for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, this thing's sitting in the sun, then it's going to be very hard to fix this because your clay is going to already be dried out too much. You got to keep an eye on your work. Okay? If you do need to walk away, say your mom says, hey, let's go to the store, and you're like, oh, I really want to go to the store, although you shouldn't be going to the store. Or hey, let's go take the dog for a walk, and you really want to take your dog for a walk, then you need to cover your stuff up with plastic. You might even get it damp, get it a little bit wet, just damp enough, and then cover it up with some plastic so that it'll stay, so it won't dry out. All right, so I now have two sides. And two vase forms and a little bit of scrap, which I'm going to throw away and put in here. And that's actually very important that anytime any scrap I have, I'm going to make sure it is staying damp and covered, because I'm going to be using this later on. Put that in there, let it sit. Now, these two pieces here are mostly going to pretty much stay the same size and shape that they are. However, these ones need to be put into approximately the right, they need to be put into the right shape at this point. Put the whole thing kind of like this. Go ahead and cut these into the right shape while it's still soft. Another one. That one goes down on the bottom. This one goes over here. This goes over here like this. And we're going to cut that at the top. And we have a bottom piece, which we'll cut a little bit bigger than it needs to be. Okay, so now I have this piece here, which is the same shape as the edge of my vase. I've got this piece here. I've got a bottom. I've got two sides. And I'm just going to let them sit and dry out right here like this. And I'm not going to let them dry too much. I'm just going to let them dry a little bit. I'm going to let them sit in the sun here and dry out a bit. But this extra clay, I'm going to go ahead and once again put a little water on it, put it away in my Ziploc so that it will stay dry. I'll be back in a few minutes. Okay, so I've actually only had this stuff sitting out here about 10 minutes because it's hot, sun's shining on it, and it's already become stiff. So it's very important that you don't let these things become too dry. See how this is holding its form? If you let this thing dry out too much and you can't move it or adjust it, then it might break, and you don't want that. You want these things to be fairly rigid and yet not dry. And I can still move this thing a little bit if I wanted to. Okay? Come up closer, please. I'm going to take this form and I'm going to attach this to the side here. I'm going to start with the fork and I'm going to scratch that edge up, and I'm going to do so really, really pretty deep. I'm not worried about trying to make this thing look good. And as a matter of fact, I don't care about that because I'm never going to see that. That's on the inside of the vase. Okay, I'm going to take this, I'm going to dip it in my water, thus getting this a little wet. I'm going to figure out what I'm going to put there. And by the way, these things I should probably cover up in plastic. This video is going to go pretty quickly, but you're going to take more time than me. So you should probably have these things, once they're all kind of dried out to the right consistency, put them in a big Ziploc bag or cover them in plastic or do something. Okay. Okay, now I put this where I want it. Oh, and I need to score up this edge here. And get that damp as well. And I'm going to really give these things a nice little push. Combining those really pretty well. I'm going to take my knife tool and I'm going to do that. Now, unfortunately, some of you guys might be like, hey, that looks great, and calling it a day. I'm not okay with that because this thing is going to come apart in the kiln later on. What you want to do, what I want you to do is I want you to combine these two. I'm going to use the butt end of my fork here to push down into that slab there. I'm taking clay from this piece and pushing it down into the bottom.
Stop killing my house.
Now I'm going to take the knife and I'm going to go back over that edge. I'm going to fill in this gap with some clay, but I'm going to start out by trying to kind of open the gap so I can see it. And then I'm going to take some fresh clay. I'm going to roll out a little tiny coil. It's time for an interesting story. You can just watch me work while I tell the story. When I was fresh out of college, I had taken a ceramics class and I met a girl and I thought, oh, I like this girl. So I'm going to take a vase that I made in college, take it down to a flower shop and ask them to put flowers in it and deliver it to her house. So of course they were happy with that. So they took my vase, they filled it full of water and flowers, and we're gonna go over to the young lady's house, but they found out that the vase leaked. So they called me up and they said, I'm sorry, but your vase leaks. And so I said, oh, I'm so embarrassed, I'm so sorry. And so I went back down to the flower shop with another vase, and you know what? It leaked too. And it turned out that just about every vase I made that semester leaked because I didn't do a very good job of making my vases, which is what I'm concerned about right now, is I want to make sure you do a really good job of combining this stuff together. So I'm actually even going to kind of push this, sew that together. If you take a look on the inside, I'm going to sew that together. You guys did a little bit of this last time with the coil pot. Now, you're not going to be able to do this on the other side because you won't be able to get in there, but you can do that to some extent. at least on this side. Okay, now I'm going to do the other side, and then I'll make another video in a second. You can go ahead and end this one. Okay, so at this point now I've added both sides, and I have cut this piece from the bottom to fit inside here so that it fits the right shape. You can kind of see how that fits in there. Okay. I'm going to now score and slip those edges and attach those. And then I'll come back. Thank you. Okay, so at this point I've done a really careful job to make sure these are really well attached all the way across the bottom and the sides. I'm not that worried about the whole thing being cleaned up yet. Really shouldn't worry about that yet. Wait till the whole form is together to be able to deal with that. This is definitely getting a little stiff. I'm noticing that this is a little hard to bend. I have scored those edges and I've scored all those edges, and I'm going to put these things together. Now, you might notice that at this point I'm not going to be able to get onto the inside because I can't reach it anymore. I want you to also notice that if this was wet, because I just rolled it out, it would probably slump down and I'd end up with a slump, which I don't want. I'm trying to make this thing nice and flat, which actually I pushed it down a little bit when I pushed on it. So I'm going to push down on the edges, but I'm not going to push down on the middle here. And I'm going to combine all these edges together all the way along, all the way over edges, and then all of these edges I'm going to make sure they line up. This is what I talked about earlier about different problem solving. Mine are not lining up as beautifully as I'd like them to be, so I'm having to trim off a little bit. Yours might line up nicely. You may have to do your own problem solving. I'm going to line those up, line these up. You're going to be dealing with different issues of consistency and so forth. So I'm going to go ahead and flip this over on that side, and I'm going to do the same process I did last time, where I'm going to push this top thing into the bottom. Then I'm going to do that. Then I'm going to add some extra clay there, and then I'll come back in a moment. So now I have my form created, but it's really not very clean looking. I should probably use a scrub pad, which I'm going to do off camera here and kind of show it to you in the end. But right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a scrub pad from the kitchen. I'm going to kind of clean up everything, get rid of all the edges. I'm also going to take some time, because this top edge is really going to be quite visible, and later on when you put flowers in here, you're going to be able to see that top edge. So you want to take time to make sure this top edge is really combined well and it looks nice and clean and everything is nice and clean. I'm also putting a little bit of extra clay in the corners here, little bits of coils of clay in the coil in the corner here, and that's simply because I think it looks better and because I want to make sure that it doesn't crack on those corners. Okay, so I'm going to clean this up and then make one last little final video where I'm going to talk to you about all the things that I'm going to specifically require with this assignment. Okay? Okay, so here's my finished vase that I'm going to ask you guys to create. You basically have a simple vase form, although you can be as creative as you want. And it's got a width to it that is enough to be able to put things in. But it has a nice little space in top. You could definitely later on put flowers in this. Although if you want to put flowers in it, it's going to need to be glazed. Now that I think about it, it's probably end up going to be a pencil holder, unless you work it out with me to glaze these things. But it is well combined all the way along the edges. It's clean. There were a couple photos that I want you to submit to me as you're working along with it. When you submit your final photo, you can also just submit that. If you submit photos along the way, like if I see the, let's see, the first photo that I want you to send me is just a photo of the slabs, of the, not slabs, but the vase form. I want to see a cutout of the vase form image, which I don't have. Actually, I'll take a screenshot of one of the along the way, and I'll post that video right here. Second image I want you to post to me, or to at least include in the end, is an image of you combining the first slab, the first edge slab, with the first surface. The next image is going to be where you are combining the other side of the form, the second vase form, to the top, and you're showing me an image showing me that you really combined those surfaces well. And then your final image is going to be what you see here, which is I want you to take a couple pictures of your vase so that I can see the whole thing is done and completed. And this is due by next Tuesday at midnight. All right.